Good evening, folks. Here we are once again. This is the DeFi Collective, which consists of myself, Robert Vaughn, and Alex Jew, aka DeFi Alex. I've
got a different name every time.
He's got a different name every time. Next time you'll be Alex the Crypto King or something. I don't know. But anyway, let's get going. Today we're gonna have a very good show today. We're gonna talk about, for one, how to protect your money, your crypto. Which is there's several things that you must do. And we're going to try to tell you what we think is the best way to protect your crypto. Also, we're going to talk a lot about data. I had, in my previous life, I was a production manager at General Motors, and in the quality office, there was this big sign that said, "In God we trust." And below it said, "Everyone else bring data." So we don't want to know what you think happened or what you think. We want to know for sure what happened. Well, they've taken that to another level now, because now everything that they do involves extracting data and using that data to compile algorithms and using those algorithms to make decisions. Business decision, what kind of records people buy, where you send people on Facebook, who to vote for. So data is sort of taken on a life of its own. So we're going to start out. I think one of the most basic ways you want to protect your crypto, and we mentioned this before, but I still got, last week I had four emails sent to the DeFi Collective at gmail.com, which is our email, DEFI Collective at gmail.com, regarding, do I really need a crypto wallet? Well, you don't really need to put your money in a bank, but it's probably safer in a bank than it is under your mattress. So we recommend to everyone, buy a crypto wallet. And I think, one thing we talked about before is buying a wallet from a reputable manufacturer like Ledger. I don't know any other ones. That's the one whenever I talk to somebody or ask somebody or do research, that's the one that always pops up, is the Ledger Nano. Now, there are many others that I'm sure very well, very good.
Trezor is pretty equivalent to Ledger.
Yeah, Trezor, right. That's another one. Yeah, Trezor's another one. Yeah. So, so we're going to get started. We're going to talk a little bit today about scams. I just saw another one today where, who was it? An Instagram influencer was telling people to send in their Bitcoin, and he would send the money. I really don't have to finish the story. I'm sure you know how the story ends.
Was he doing like, I'll pay you above market for him and stuff?
Yeah, like exactly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're never going to see that again. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll pay you above market. This is a chance of a lifetime. So I guess the Security and Exchange Commission and the FBI had a conversation with him, and I would assume he's either in jail or bailed out.
About Jay Mazzini.
Right, that's who it was.
Yep.
Yeah, that's who it was. Yeah,
he's he's in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and crypto, Bitcoin, it's hot now, so you're going to see a lot of ads, a lot of activity, and anytime you have a lot of activity and a lot of money changing hands, you have a lot of scams. And the thing that makes crypto different is that if someone gets access to your crypto and transfers it to somewhere else, I mean, the chances of you getting it back are like, where you say you got two chances, slim and none, and slim left town, so you won't get it back. So it's very important.
Slim left with your crypto. So
yeah, slim left with the crypto in his back pocket. So you want to be very careful. How you approach this, because it's new. It's new to all of us. Some it's a little newer than others, but it's a new technology. And I'm going to let Alex speak a little bit about some of the different ways and that you can lose crypto and some of the different protections you want to make sure you have. And a lot of it's common sense, and a lot of it's knowing a little about what you're doing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, because people are making so much money, and it's becoming such a hot subject, simultaneously with the fact that like a lot of people don't really understand it yet. Of course, you have people that are taking advantage of that situation, right? And so there's a lot of scams happening. especially trading scams. And trading scams are nothing new, right? We've had the Forex trading scams for a long time. A lot of them have really just added Bitcoin to the end of it. Like all their marketing materials are the same. These like little like, you know, single day conferences are the same. Like, you know, come to this talk to my upline. But the fact is that if you're going to be paying somebody else, it's most likely a scam. At the end of the day, the point of cryptocurrency and the point of decentralization is that you don't have to rely on some centralized platform. You don't have to rely on somebody's like exclusive like invite for something. You don't have to like throw your 9 to 5 away to join the future, right? The fact is that if somebody's selling you on this image of what wealth looks like, they're most likely wealthy because they've taken advantage of a bunch of people, right? If you're looking at somebody's Instagram and it's like, you know, cars and just like stacks of money for no reason, even though they're selling cryptocurrency trading, like for some reason they're like selling you cryptocurrency trading, but they're holding like stacks of US dollars. Like this is a major red flag, right? Because they're selling you on the image of like, look, if you give me money every month, you're going to be rich. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you being the victim of that, you're just the reason that this person is going to have a bunch of money, right? And then they're flaunting it. That's their marketing campaign, is flaunting it. So you want to be careful of those types of things that are like, because any platform that you trade on should be free. There, you know, some of them may have minimums for certain things or maximums. That's going to be pretty normal. But what you want to look for are places that are they're insured. They have like the proper regulatory things for the US. And it just means like taking ownership over like reading, you know, terms, reading the small print. A lot of these scam websites, the way that they work, they'll make the promises really big at the top. And then you'll look at the bottom and the small text will say things like, this is just one example of somebody and it's like fictional. They'll even say things like, oh, it's fictional. This is something that we're striving for, you know, like this is like optimistic, you know, they'll use this terminology in the terms at the bottom to say, this isn't real. This is not a real promise. We're not really going to 4x your money or 10x your money. You're most likely going to lose money in those situations. So I think that sort of sums up a little bit of like, broadly speaking, avoid platforms you have to pay for, avoid people that are selling you on some sort of like exclusive club that you're going to have to pay for. The fact is, realistically, you're still going to have to work. You're still going to have to make a living. If everybody quit their 9 to 5s tomorrow to trade cryptocurrency, the world would crumble. Like, imagine if everybody just quit their 9 to 5s because they found out about this big secret of like, you can be rich, and then nobody would be working anymore. It wouldn't matter how much cryptocurrency you had. The world would just stop. It would just, cease existing. So, don't buy into those, like it's all just taking advantage of you. So, just be extremely careful.
Right. And I would add this too, even with the stock market, people, short this, go long on this, buy this, sell this. And one of the things I learned early on was every time somebody makes money, somebody on the other side loses money. and that's sort of the law of equilibrium. You have and if somebody makes money with Bitcoin, if somebody tells you, hey, I can make money, but that money's going to come from somewhere. So somebody else is going to lose money. And many times it's going to be you thinking you're going to make money that's going to lose money so somebody else can make it. So I would just, just kind of use a little common sense. A lot of stock market scams going on now too. I mean, I know there's another hedge fund the other day that just went in the dumps, hit up for had a $30 billion margin call, couldn't make it. So they had to fold. You say, wow, 30 billion. And that's like not money that comes out of thin air. That's money, $30 billion that came out of somebody's pocket, probably a lot of people, and basically it was a similar scam. I'll get you better returns. I've got this system and blah, blah, blah. And, it really, I think he really didn't, he was way over leveraged, didn't have enough money to even make his market call more or less pay people off. So the whole thing crumbled. And I guess, he didn't have the $30 billion. So whoever put money up lost a lot of money. And I guess there were a few big banks that took a hit too. And a lot of times when that happens, they kind of get into crypto a little bit, because I've checked out a couple of cryptocurrencies the past week or two. And it's like every time there's a scam like that, they kind of tick up a little bit, which means that, the money people kind of feel like, hey, maybe I better put some more over here. Maybe I better put some more over here, and that's another thing you want to check too when whether it's Bitcoin, whatever currency you decide to get involved in, don't just look at how far up it goes or how far down it goes. Look at the volume, because the volume tells you if it's legit or not.
Yep.
If you have light volume and see a big swing, there's something going on there that you probably want to just, it's like the
manipulation.
Like the Gonzaga game. You just want to kind of sit back and watch that one. I wouldn't put a bet on either team there,
right.
But you want to pay close attention to your volume. And in that sense, crypto is the same as you would in the stock market. If you see a big move with a lot of volume, that means Warren Buffett and Elon Musk both bought the same thing. So that's probably a pretty good thing.
Yeah, a few whales got in, right? A lot of cryptocurrencies, a lot of them have no proprietary technology. Something like Dogecoin, for example. And Dogecoin was just a few rich people really pumping it. Even though there's absolutely nothing proprietary about Dogecoin. When you look at the code, it's open source. When you look at the code, it's copied from Bitcoin with one exception. It does not have the scarcity. So when you think about that, you're like, okay, what makes Bitcoin really valuable? Well, one of the main things is scarcity. And then Dogecoin is not only not proprietary, it removes the most proprietary part of Bitcoin from the equation. Right. And yet all these people are like pumping to the moon. And like, if you're, the last one standing there holding the bag, you're done. You're like, you just lost all your money in a coin that was created as a joke, and so you have to be extremely careful looking at things like volume, right? Because Dogecoin was very static for most of the time. And a lot of these coins, you read the white paper, honestly, before you get into a small coin, if you want to get into smaller coins, the things like Bitcoin and Ethereum are pretty safe bets. If you look at the top 10 tokens right now, they're probably, most of them, 90% of them are probably safe bets, unless it's like Dogecoin pump season and Dogecoin ended up in the top 10. But if you go outside of that, you have to really, really do your research. You have to read the white paper. You have to look at who's in the team, what other projects they've done. Look who the investors are. Look at what other projects they've invested in. And this is the homework you have to do, because unlike, this is the same with the stock market, right? Before you go into a smaller penny stock and you risk real money of yours on something, you have to know exactly what this is, because otherwise you're not like a hedge fund that's throwing money at 3,000 different things. And if 10 of them stick, you're going home with profits, right? Like when you're just an average person and you're risking real money of yours on something, you've got to do your homework. You don't have the luxury to just throw a bunch of pieces of spaghetti at the wall and hope one
sticks.
One sticks. So
yeah, that's good. Good advice. Data. Data. We live in a I guess a data. We were on a gold standard. Now we're kind of on what we like to think of as a data standard. Data is the commodity that is traded, that is sold, that is used to compose different algorithms that has value. Data, this is why when Google in the early 2000s, when Google, they didn't make money for a long, long time. But the people involved knew that because of the data they were collecting and the way they were going to use that data, that that was going to eventually be the part that made the most money, was the data. Same with Facebook. Facebook makes the most money, with their advertising, which comes from the data. One of the things about data, And surveillance capitalism is the extraction of your data and my data and Alex's data, and the monetization of that data. And this is where a lot of companies make money. They take that data and they say, well, we know Alex is a food critic, and we know he kind of walks down this street every day, and about 10:15, just send him a coupon to this hamburger place because we know he likes hamburgers. So this is a simplified way in how data is used. Of course, it's much more complex than that. But data is becoming a commodity of its own. And it's really sort of an emerging technology, I would think, but it's not a mature economic system yet. And it's a lot of people are finding out about it. Most of the people that know about it, they're not telling anybody. That's a great secret to have. If you're a data scientist and you know kind of what to do and how to construct these algorithms and how to use them and how to monetize them, that's a pretty valuable skill to have. So many people are not even aware of their data being extracted and how it's used.
Yeah.
So Alex, speak a little bit about the data's relationship to the economy now, if you would.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your burger example is interesting because so much of that is happening, but it's extremely automated. I'll give an example. We can use that example. So there's these things called beacons. Actually, we can talk about beacons because they're sort of like becoming they're a pretty common thing at this point. So imagine that I am walking down the street at a certain time, almost every day. And imagine that there's even like a locally owned or a small burger shop on the way that I pass, or a big one like McDonald's who might have their own infrastructure. But let's say that burger shop signs up for some vendor that is like a rewards program. Okay. And that rewards program, that tech company, what's valuable about them is their relationship of the real world to the data that they store and how that moves customers into the business and retains those customers after the fact. So imagine that I'm walking by the burger place, and let's say that I have that rewards program app on my phone. They might have beacons that extend out into the sidewalk and will connect with my app on my phone and know how often I'm passing that burger place, around what time, and then they can start pushing notifications to me at the right time. And all of that can happen to get me into the door with a coupon or like a reminder even that's incentivizing for me to grab lunch there. And all of this happens without me having any clue, potentially. I would probably know, but the average person has no clue that all this happened literally because their actual steps are being traced, right? If you took the beacons around a city like Chicago, where I live, and like a half a mile walk that I might have, I mean, it's amazing how the every single step you take essentially could be traced if you combine the data from everything that gets that you're carrying around this device that tracks every single thing you do. When you walk up to a Target, the Target beacons notice that you're there, and they will actually change the prices on the website. When you look at like, let's say you're looking up a thing that might be in the store and you're looking it up online, it could change the prices that you're seeing online so that you'll buy it from the store or buy it from online, whatever they want you to do. They'll start shifting what you see on your device to make a different decision for you. All because it's tracking you and you don't even know.
I tried that experiment and it's actually true. The Target, I've taken it off now, but I had the Target app on my phone. And most of the time when I have apps on my phones, I don't allow location tracking. And you can, if you have an iPhone, you can cut that off. So I don't allow, but I just wanted to try that experiment. And I was looking for some dumbbells. And, if you're sitting at home and you look on a computer or you look on your phone, you get one price. If you go into the store, you get a completely different price. The price is always higher if you're on someone's app in the store. And the reason for that is because they know you're in the store. Because I always assume that if I'm in the store, hey, the beacon will know I'm there and give me a lower price to make me buy it. But it doesn't work that way.
No.
If you're already in the store, you pay a higher price than if you were at the back of the parking lot or across the street.
Right.
And it's crazy how that works, but that's how data is used.
Yeah.
That's
why we're on a data standard, right? Because
right,
gold was a storage of value, but not in this dynamic way, right? Mm-hmm. The reason that data is taken over gold is because it's more relevant to the system, right? Gold has some utility for sure, especially if you're an aerospace engineer or something. Like gold has uses, but the intimate use of data in every small aspect of our lives that we don't even realize all the time, that I don't even realize all the time. And I work in this stuff. Like I don't even realize every intricate detail, consciously all the time that data, how data affects my life. That is such an intimate connection of our storage of value and how we make decisions, right? The little dark user experience components just around us that make decisions for us. And so, ultimately that's why data has become the storage of value, because data not only helps us understand ourselves, helps us understand society better, it helps companies understand those things enough to manipulate them. Mm-hmm. This is where we run into problems, right? Because if we're being manipulated and we're not in on the, we're like not in on the conversation, right? Exactly. We don't have ownership over how that's done. Mm-hmm. We don't have visibility into how it's done. The platforms themselves, when you talk about AI, don't have visibility in how it's working because they've just created the scaffolding for it. And this living being inside is constantly making those decisions for them and for us, knowing what the goals are, right? Like the goals are to keep us on longer, to make us spend more money. That's all Facebook knows. Facebook knows what the goals are. Facebook doesn't know what the neural networks are that are making those decisions. And that's how we end up in problems, right? And that's why we have to build a brighter future where, we're not constantly manipulated to the point where people can be negatively manipulated, and it can cause very serious issues in society.
Well, I'll just give you a couple examples. Last summer, one of the things about surveillance capitalism and the use of your data is that what happens, Alex spoke of these neural networks. The data networks, the algorithms are set up in neural networks. If you think about your brain, you have this neuron that's connected to 4 or 5 other neurons, and they're connected to 4 or 5 other neurons.
Little branches.
Yeah, little branches, and you're able to figure things out, so to speak. Well, a lot of the networks, that these companies use are very similar. Only the neurons are maybe an AI algorithm or an AI pocket, and it's connected to different. So a lot of times, the guys at Facebook don't really understand how things are working.
It's grown organically, right? As engineers, we used what engineers used to do is we would be given a set of criteria that says, here are the possible conditions you might have. And here's what happens for those different conditions. It's very different now when we're talking about things like this, right? When we're talking about algorithms, the algorithm writes itself. Those branches form themselves based off of groups of data. So let's say they notice, there's like 100 different people that are walking by this burger shop. The company's not consciously figuring that out. The algorithm is figuring it out consciously itself. And it's saying, here's a new branch for this group of people that are taking this certain behavior and that have these other qualities or characteristics that are being measured right now that are showing positive signals. And based on those positive signals, we're making new branches that are different logic gates. An engineer isn't sitting there making those decisions. The thing's making those decisions itself. And the engineer is just, probably getting coffee or something, and that's, so that's what's happening. That's sort of the difference.
Right. And your data is being extracted in ways that you probably don't have an idea. For instance, you know, on any social media platform now, not just Facebook. Facebook is the obvious one because they're the biggest, Facebook and Google. But you know, facial expressions are correlated with you having certain feelings. You know, they did. If you want to look up something interesting, look up contagion experiments. And what contagion experiments do is they take Alex's feeling about something, they transfer it to me and a bunch of other people to achieve a certain objective. And if you don't think data affects you, data has elected a couple presidents. Obama was the first one to really use data. And if you want to check it out, look and see how many people from Google were involved in this campaign. And that'll tell you something. But he was the first one to really develop targeted marketing with the use of beacons and the use of cell phone text. And what he would do, he would figure out who had a propensity to vote for him, and he would individually target those people with people going by and knocking on their door and making sure they got to the polls. That's why when he was his last State of the Union address, he said, yeah, he said, I got elected twice. And he said, if I ran again, I could get elected a third time. Because he, at that time, he was kind of like ahead of the game when it came to data. Well, along comes Donald Trump and Cambridge Analytica. They say, well, hey, buddy, two could play that game.
They use the same methodology.
Same methodology. And he got elected. You know, I don't know for a fact that Biden used it, but it would really shock me if he didn't, if he wasn't heavily into data. So, you know, and this data is extracted in ways that you probably don't even know about. For instance, if you have a Nest thermostat, there's a microphone in there. Why should Google have a microphone in a Nest thermostat? Just think about that for a minute. Also, this is something else that I found interesting. You know, you see the Google Maps little cars going around, and they're taking pictures. They take pictures of the street in order to keep the Google Maps updated. You know, because you can go on Google Maps right now and look up your house or look up something, and it'll even show you your car in a driveway, and maybe you standing out in the front yard. Well, they go around a lot and they take a lot of pictures. But what they also do is they extract data from the Wi-Fi that's in the air, which is perfectly legal. Yep. So if they ride in front of your house, they can extract everything that's going on with your Wi-Fi, everything that's stored, everything that's going on at that particular time. Cable companies do it too, but Google, you know, is probably the best in the world at it. And from that data that they collect from you, you know, they develop algorithms and they sell that to somebody and they monetize it.
Yep.
You know, that's what, you know, Ford Motor Company figured out that they were looking for additional income streams. They said, of course, we'll get electric cars and all that, but we don't really need to raise the price on cars. And it said, because we have, you know, millions and millions and millions of people giving us their data all day long. You know, a lot of times, you know, with GM, it's OnStar. And if you don't think that's a two-way microphone and it's not, you think it's not on when you don't cut it on, you're in for a surprise. It extracts your data. You know, Ford says we got millions of people riding around in cars. You imagine how much data we can extract when they're talking on the phone, you know, and that's why just about every data collection system is either integrated with either Facebook, iPhone, or Google.
Yeah.
You know, and they probably share a lot of the data, I would imagine, you know, but data, you know, affects what happens every day. And, you know, like Alex said, it does it without your knowledge, which is really kind of creepy, you know, because, you know, if you want to use my data, well, how about sending me a data check every month?
Exactly. Right.
Robert, here's your check, you know, we made 20 grand off you. Here's $1,200, you know, thanks, you know, or something, you know. But and I think you know, as we move forward, data is going to become I don't want to see any more anything negative about it, but it's just like the atomic bomb, like nuclear energy. It could be used for a lot of good. It could be used for a lot of bad. The same thing with data.
Right.
One thing you want to keep in mind that these data networks and these companies, they're not just, in California or Texas. They're worldwide. that's that's why when Zuckerberg went to India and said, "We'll give you free internet," and you know what they said? If you don't get out of here, man, we'll.
Yeah. Yeah, he's gonna get a free beating. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
get a free, what?
yeah.
But he wanted to give him free internet, then he'd have all the data in the country, which
Yeah.
is.
Why do you think these companies are? There's tons of American-based companies or UK-based companies, Australian-based companies that are running brand new internet lines in African countries and South American countries. A lot of these sort of countries are getting brand new internet infrastructure from very Western companies. Why do you think that they're not charities. So like, what are they benefiting from that? Right. And what they're benefiting from is they're building a future economy on the data that runs on those lines, right? Data is the currency of those future economies. And so what they're doing, they're not injecting cash into these economies. I mean, in some way, maybe they're creating some jobs or whatever, but what they're creating is a data-based economy for these future economies. And they're the ones in the middle controlling the whole thing, right? It's a centralized control over a future economy completely based on the data streaming in between people. And that is just, because it's the new colonialization too, right? Like it's capitalism, just like, just crap in the bed again, because it's recycling the same horrific things that have happened previously in capitalism. So.
And all these economic systems, they're born, they mature, and then they die. If you look at, feudalism, matter of fact, capitalism is like turning into the new feudalism. You have royalty and you have serfs, and there's nothing like in between, there's no middle class in feudalism, whether it's mercantilism, slavery, manorialism, they all come on the scene. They last about 300 to 500 years, and then they usually die a terrible death. Because anytime you have that much change, there's a lot of resistance and a lot of turmoil, but another interesting fact, if you want to become successful in music, that's done through data. Mm-hmm. It's done through, they are now projecting who's going to be famous before they're famous. And they can do this with data. And the real story behind TikTok, the reason they didn't want TikTok in this country, because TikTok is the most efficient platform for extracting data and manipulating data. And they're better than Facebook, they're better than Google. And right now, TikTok, if you want to be an artist, the way you launch is on TikTok.
Yep.
And TikTok has developed, it's a Chinese-owned company, and it's the most effective at what it does now. And I think, there was, I know Trump had banned TikTok for a while. That didn't hold up too long, but, I'm sure a lot of people like to ban Google or Facebook sometimes, some countries. But that's why, a lot of people are so down on TikTok, because they're pretty good at what they do. And eventually you'll see data weaponized, I think.
Yep.
It's just used for making money, but if we really don't get a handle on it, I think you'll see data weaponized.
What is half of North Korea's military at this point? It's not
cyber.
It's
cyber. It's cyber, man.
Yeah,
it's cyber. And it's sort of like that's the poor man's H-bomb or something. It's cyber. Cyber's weapons, and I'm sure they'll get more sophisticated. Because the nature of data is that with the AI and the neural networks, they kind of teach themselves how to do what they're doing better. And I know, it used to. There's always the thing of the robot saying, you know what? I don't want to work for you anymore. You know, I want a union. As a matter of fact, I don't want a union. I want to own the company. So now you're working for me, you know. And that seems kind of weird, but I mean, you know, that may not be uh, so far-fetched
Yeah.
in terms of
Well, it's
not,
the fourth industrial revolution, right? Is the automation um, of industry. And when you have complete automation of industry to the point where, you know, human beings aren't even necessary in the equation as much, then you really do have a serious potential feudalism situation, right? Because if you eliminate the job sectors for hundreds of millions of people at least, um, and at some point billions of people, uh, you're going to have two groups of people. You're going to have the landowners, the landowners and the robot owners, and you're going to have everybody else doesn't have a job.
yeah,
And the other thing that we have to remember too is that robots don't pay payroll taxes, right? Robots don't pay tax, you know, or income tax. And the company owner doesn't have to pay payroll tax on payroll that's not, you know, robots don't get payroll, right? So there's no taxation coming out of that that's even going back into the system to help everybody else. So
right,
you're really looking at a situation again where you have a handful of people who own all the robots and all of the industry and all of the land, and everybody else who's like, wait, this didn't work out. um, and so we have to do something, you know, we have to do something to take ownership over our data that's creating that future where we're not even, you know, most people aren't even a part of it. They don't even have a job in that scenario. And
right,
it literally, it would be created theoretically based on understanding all of their data and creating the models to use that data to, you know, make everything more efficient.
right, right.
So,
There are only two and surveillance capitalist companies that use surveillance capitalism, use the acquisition of data to monetize and make money off of. They call that that uses everybody that gets their data extracted, they call them users. You know, they refer to, you know, all of us as users when they say, you know, you get a sign. I'm sure everybody gets assigned a number or a value, and you're referred to as a user. Now, the only other business I can think of that refers to people as users are drug.
yeah.
They refer to people as users, so that may be a little telling. Um, you know, I think every time there's a shift in the economy, uh, capitalism is sort of the worldwide economic system now. And what's happening is that because of its very nature, um, the wealth is being concentrated once again. Um, every time you lower taxes, you know, a company can make $100 billion and pay no tax, and you can make 100 grand and pay 50 grand taxes. There's certain inequality there. And you know what happens is that eventually, and I think this is one of the biggest, Karl Marx referred this to as one of the biggest catch-22s of capitalism, that eventually the money's going to go from the bottom to the top.
Yeah.
And for capitalism to exist, if you don't have any money on the bottom to support the middle class for the top 1% to make money off of, the system kind of falls. And you see what we, you know, like, you know, in 2000, what was it, the dot-com crisis? You know, when the government's not supposed to be involved in capitalism. It's supposed to be a free market, theoretically. You know, 2000, we had to bail out the dot-coms. What was it in 2008? It was the Enron, the big energy deal. And real estate, that's about 2008. I think when the
Yep, same time.
yeah, when they took a dump. You know, and now last year was coronavirus. You know, and every 4 or 5 or 10 years it's something, but you know, it's the nature of the system, you know, that kind of causes these things to happen. You know, back in the 20s and 30s, I was surprised to find this out, but one of the biggest political parties in the 20s and 30s was the Socialist Party.
Yep.
And there was a Communist Party, and I guess they kind of came together, and there were a Workers' Party, and they kind of came together and said, hey, this is what we need. We need Social Security, we need unemployment, we need retirement, we need Medicare. If you give these things, we'll vote for you, FDR. So he said, okay, I'll give you those things and you vote.
Hence the New Deal, right? It was the socialist era that bred the New Deal and several couple like additions to the New Deal in the decades that followed. But yeah,
that was the New Deal. And that was when all these programs came about. And also the WPA, they've created jobs for 15 to 18 million people. And it was infrastructure, kind of like what we've been hearing lately is infrastructure.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but you can't let the guy making $200 billion off scot-free. I think he's got to put in too, because he didn't do that by himself. When a company says, oh, well, they're successful, well, yeah, Tesla may be successful, but somebody has to pay for the roads to those cars to run on. Somebody has to pay for the generation of that electricity, and that's a lot of infrastructure. So a lot of times when businesses make a ton of money, there's a lot of federal money that went into supporting that.
Yeah.
A lot of money from everyday people that pay taxes that went into supporting that. So I think eventually I think the data standard is here to stay. I mean, it's not like you can just kind of ignore it. It's like crypto. People, I had a guy tell me the other day, he has a catering business. And he said, well, we don't take crypto. He says, man, we take cash and credit cards. When he called me the other day, he says, hey, I see Bitcoin is up again, man. He said, I think we're going to start taking crypto. I said, man, you're one of those people that resisted taking debit cards. I can recall about 10 years ago. So these things kind of have a life of their own. And, the data standard is here to stay. What I would encourage people to do is to find out about it. And if I had, my kids are doing pretty good for themselves, but if I had a young one just coming into the world now, I'd say, you're going to be a data scientist when you grow up.
I think that's the crazy thing is like, we used to even being like a data scientist used to be like a very specific thing, but now every company, even pizza companies and real estate companies, everything has to become a tech company. And in the process of becoming a tech company right now, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what you're doing, if you can establish some sort of proprietary software, and you can have some sort of proprietary storage of data and some sort of proprietary analysis of that data to understand something about your customers or about your industry that sets you apart, then that's success, right? Success isn't being the one who makes the best cupcakes or being the one who has like a special blend of concrete. Success right now is knowing exactly, because of data, how to, get into the right market, sell to the right people, participate in the right things, right? And all of that comes down to data. And so, I mean, it's kind of crazy because a lot of, as we talk about things like automation and we talk about all these economic and social changes that are happening, it's almost beyond politics, right? Because the thing about progress and the thing about the cycle of certain systems is that we don't necessarily have direct control over that cycle. What we have control over is like, what do we do about it? Like how do we set things up so that that transition's less painful? And how do we set it up so that like we're advocating for, being proactive enough that like we don't learn things the hard way over and over and over again. Right. And so for that future system, we know that we're moving towards a situation where we're going to have major wealth inequality is going to get worse. We're going to have major issues where, we have ethical dilemmas around our own data and how it's used. And what do we do about that? Well, what we do about that is we really start building the tools. As if you're a builder, you have to like build the right tools to make sure that we have transparency and ownership over those things that are obviously critical components for the future. And that's where decentralization comes in.
Right, right. And I think like you say, decentralized finance and blockchain have a way of kind of leveling a playing field, if you will, because a lot of the major money now that gets spent or injected or used comes from hedge funds. A lot of money goes to hedge funds, and a lot of it comes out through hedge funds, because that's a pretty good a way, if you have a lot of money, to make sure you're going to make more money. Oh. And most of them, if they don't fold, they usually do pretty good. And I think
they don't turn into a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, turn to a Ponzi scheme. Yeah.
Yeah, if they actually have the money that they say they do.
Yeah. Well, they are kind of like you think of all the different instruments that they use, the derivatives, I talked to one guy, he says, well, you go long and short at the same time, and I said, it kind of sounds like Vegas, man, the house. When you're playing poker, the house gets 5% every pot. You can't lose, He said, yeah, it's sort of like that, I said, okay, go long and short at the same time. He said, well, you make tons of fees and you don't make millions of dollars, but you can make a lot of money, I said, oh, okay. Well, I guess that's not a Ponzi scheme. That's I guess something else. But I think like I said, blockchain and decentralized finance has a way of taking the middleman out of the equation, so you can make decisions on what you want to do with your money. You don't have to buy a CD and get 1.01%, and the bank get 40%, in the crypto market, and gives you 1.1%. You can take the middleman out of the equation, and you can make decisions on where to put your money and, how much you're going to make, so I think that's one instance. And I think blockchain will take a lot of the middlemen out of the equation. As a matter of fact, that's what everybody's trying to do now, is to figure out how we make money with blockchain. Where can we charge a fee? Where can we insert ourselves in there to make sure, we're like the house man,
Yeah.
And I think that becomes more difficult because of the very nature of blockchain, of decentralized finance.
Right. So let's say, like, in the future, for example, we might have, in a darker future, we might have a guy who owns, the majority of a city. Okay. He owns all of the real estate in a large city. Let's say half of Chicago is owned by one person 100 years from now. Okay. That's like a darker future. What decentralization offers us,
Duke of Westchester, man,
right? Exactly. I mean, it's the same guy is like, he's the one making all the decisions for that many buildings, and like, who do you even call at that point to be like, yeah, he's messing up, like, his partner who owns the other half, you know what I mean? Like, but in a decentralized future, maybe there's a couple guys like that who like still own a good amount, but let's say that there's like 3,000 Chicagoans who have used a decentralized protocol to own $10 here and $15 there and $20 there of like actual properties. And you're getting little like investments back, like when that property goes up in value, when like some foreign investment comes in, and maybe it's another collective of people from another country that have invested in a building here. And like, all of a sudden you've created this like decentralized way of like, no matter what little amounts you have, the system is deciding, and there's delegates, and, maybe there's proof of stake with delegates, and maybe everybody's making decisions collectively on this this protocol that it gives you governance over land ownership and property ownership. And now you've like solved this problem where even if those people don't necessarily have jobs, and maybe in this future economy that's really nice, they don't need jobs, they can start owning things and being properly compensated for the fact that they're the ones living there, and they're the ones that are participating in that economy, and they're the ones making the decisions collectively, and the system allows them to work collectively in a decentralized way, so that you don't have one person in the middle who's calling all the shots, who doesn't really care if you live or die, or doesn't really care if the water works in a certain building, right? And this solves a lot of issues of having like that one person in the middle who is not doing a great job.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
But who just got lucky over the course of, the economy crumbling and people losing their jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. Another I had an interesting conversation last week with a data scientist, and my physician, his son is this data scientist who's been doing this like as long as you, Alex, not longer. And I'm like, I said, all this time I've been coming to you, and your son's a data scientist, and you never told me this. Yeah, I knew you bugged the heck out of him. So, but anyway, we had a conversation, and he brought up something interesting in terms of using blockchain for voting.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
I said, man, oh man. I said, okay, now that's an interesting concept.
Blockchain voting would completely revolutionize the political situation in our country.
It would take money totally out of the equation.
Yep.
And obviously it's going to be resisted until the last possible minute. But I see that coming down the road. What do you think?
Yeah, so this is something I've been advocating for a while, because there would be no concerns over like any sort of voter fraud. There would be no like concerns over how do you get to the voting, how do you like mail it in, is it secure? There would be no questions around that. There would be no apps failing in Iowa, making the DNC look bad, right?
Yeah.
There would be absolutely no possibility for this to be hacked or to have like dead people voting, all these things that people worry about that aren't really big deals, but you wouldn't even have the concern over it.
Mm-hmm.
It would be immediate. Everything would be immediately settled. You wouldn't have to spend, the news, I don't know what the news stations would do, because they would have to lose 72 hours of content of just zooming in and out on a map, waiting for more people to show up. But it would completely change that. The other thing that it would completely change is the complexity of how we vote. This is a major problem, right? Because right now, we have to be extremely simple and vote for just one person. It sustains this like two-party system where, everybody who like wanted other nominees had essentially just to vote for the one person that their party picked anyway. Mm-hmm. And you lose voter engagement, you lose morale. You don't always end up with the best person.
So you lose the ability for something to change.
Right. These are big problems. So imagine a situation where you have decentralized voting. Every citizen is automatically granted a voting token or something. You get one token sent to your wallet. Let's say you have a citizenship token. You have citizenship tokens. You get like a voting token assigned to your citizenship. Like there's these different decentralized ways where everything would be decentralized, but you would get like a token for voting. You would use that one token for whatever office. And then you could have ranked choice voting with it. So that token could have smart contracts where you can do what's called ranked choice, meaning instead of I'm just picking one person, I'm like ranking maybe my top 5. So I'm going like, here's my top 5 for president. Mm-hmm. And what that does is it ends up with a much fairer situation, because let's say like for, 40 million people had Joe Biden as like their second or third. But like, I don't know, 10 million had Bernie Sanders as their number 1. And like, you know what I mean? Like you start seeing how the math could be more complex because the blockchain figures it all out. And then you could have very different election turnout based on the rank of who was voted for and how strongly those people felt for it. And it would still be majority wins, but you would allow it to be more fair in terms of who got a fair shot.
Right. Yeah, I think ranked choice is a great system. I know one of the things that happened, I used to work on some elections in a city I used to live in. I used to run some elections and work with some candidates. And for the council, there would be 5 people running. So you could vote for 5 people. What would happen was somebody got smart and said, well, let's just vote for one person. And that way, that gives our one vote an extra, 15% voting weight.
Yeah.
Or 7.5%, because you're depriving the other 4
right.
a half a vote, so to speak, when you don't vote for
Hmm.
them. So I think in a case like that, where you had ranked choice, where you had to allocate all the votes, would probably be a much fairer system.
Right. You would have to figure out the logics to ensure it's the most fair. But all that's possible with blockchain, and you don't have to have all these volunteer workers who are sitting there like thumbing through things, tallying it up. You wouldn't have any of that. None of it would be necessary. There would be zero room for human error,
Mhm.
which is just it's amazing to think about.
And you would get the person elected to office that most people wanted,
Right.
and you would take surveillance capitalism out of the equation. So
It's
you
fully
could,
transparent.
yeah, you couldn't have manipulation or the use of data. Whoever had the best data scientist is not necessarily going to be the president, and then you could. But then what would Fox and CNN and MSNBC show all the time? They'd have to.
Well, they're kind of middlemen themselves, right? Because
Yeah.
the news anchors don't understand any of the subjects that they report on half the time. I have nothing against. There's plenty of reporters who are wonderful, who package things cleanly, whatever. But at the end of the day, the problem is we have a bunch of talking heads that spend hours every day. They're sometimes the only voice that people hear about a certain subject, and they have zero education in the subjects that they're discussing.
They couldn't care less.
Right.
They get nice salaries, and I mean, some of them are making 20, 30, 40 million bucks a year.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good salary.
Many journalists have to write. They have to write about a subject, which means they have to do research on it. They have to check all their sources. And most of the talking heads on news stations, they probably looked at the script right before they sat down. They like were eating and just sort of like, well, I guess.
Yeah, the producers kind of, that's the producers. That's why when you see one, it's funny, you see one and they use data analytics to decide what kind of producer and what they look. But if you see one, you'll get another one that's just like the other one.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If one goes out the side, you need to have one step right in there and be the same, appeal to the same demographics as the one before. Yeah. And the producers are really the ones that are calling the shots. But I hear what you're saying, though. They would actually have to, do like the old newspaper guys did and get in and research a subject and learn about it, But
yeah.
But we could go on and on about data. And I'm sure we will revisit this at some time in the near future because, like I said, data, surveillance capitalism is here to stay. And we're in a new era that, we'll have to learn how to navigate. Because one thing you want to keep in mind, anytime there's a new economic system, there'll be a lot of resistance to it, like Goldman Sachs, Bitcoin sucks. What did they do last month? Opened up their Bitcoin department again, their crypto department.
Yeah. We got JP Morgan Chase when they're like, Bitcoin's a scam, don't buy it, Bitcoin, blah, 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 while they're buying Ethereum. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like
they're dropping a few billion, but telling you not to buy it, Yeah. So
easy. So a lot of questions that we've gotten have been, what is it, right? What is Bitcoin? And I think the best thing that I can summarize here is that Bitcoin is a storage of wealth that is literally just a payload of data. Like what the blockchain is, what a block in the blockchain is it's hashed data. That's all it is. There's a payload of data that's been hashed onto the block, and there's a payload that's hashed that is connected to the block before it, and that's connected to the block before it, and that's connected to the block before it. And everybody that's a part of it has a storage of those blocks that can verify the data. That it's been verified, it hasn't been manipulated. Everybody's blocks are in agreement, and there's nothing in the middle that's controlling the data that's on those blocks. That's the simple way to say it. It's a storage of wealth that is data for a future that's based on a data standard.
There'd be no more election recounts. Everybody could just kind of chill out,
Maybe we do one for fun. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe whoever said, yeah.
It'll take 2 seconds, but we.
But like I said, data, and we will be revisiting this subject from time to time. We're going to speak more in the future about, some of the societal implications of blockchain, of crypto, because there's a change going on. There's a change going on. And, you know, a lot of times when change happens, you don't really notice while it's happening. And all of a sudden, bam, you know, wow, how do we get here?
All
You
of a
know,
sudden, SNL has a skit about NFTs.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. How about that? That's the hottest thing now, NFTs. So yeah, yeah. But well, you know, we certainly appreciate you sharing your evening with us. And unfortunately, our time is up, but we thank you for yours. And remember, you can reach us at the DeFi Collective at gmail.com, DEFI Collective at gmail.com. My name is Robert Vaughn. This is Alex Jewell. And until next Wednesday, wear your mask. Any words of wisdom, Alex?
Yeah, wear your mask.
Stay healthy and get you a crypto wallet so you
Yeah.
keep your money safe. Okay. All right. Well, hey, thanks, and we'll see you next week. Take care.